Hey, Lyle here again. Wanted to take a look today at this Midland MXT275 GMRS mobile. This is an interesting unit. I got this one for my Toyota Tacoma. Some of you may know I do overlanding. I'm also a ham radio operator, but not everybody on a given trip is going to be a ham radio operator. So I wanted to have a FCC legal Part 95 compliant GMRS radio to use in the truck, but I also wanted something that was pretty small, that I don't have a lot of space to mount a display. So I really liked the format of this radio with all of the controls in the handheld speaker microphone. That was a pretty unique design, pretty interesting. 15 watts is going to be more than enough power for the things that I'm wanting to do with it, especially with a decent external antenna. So let's take a look at this. Well, this radio is really small, and that's one of the things I really like about it. You can see here for a size comparison, I've got a Swiss Army knife and a GoPro, and then let me just grab my Google Pixel smartphone here, and you can see from a size comparison the actual transmitting RF device here is really, really small, which I really like. We can see it's got Midland model MXT275. We've got our FCC ID on the label there. When I look at this FCC ID, it is Part 95 compliant, but it's with the older, it's not 95E, it's the older compliance. So just a quick walk around the radio. This unit here comes with a really cool mounting system. So the mounting base allows you to slide the radio into this. It can be slid into either orientation. So I've got the speaker going up at this point, or the speaker going down. Really nice mounting. I really like this mounting a lot. So let's look at the other connections on this device. On the back, I've got a standard SO239 socket for a PL259 antenna connector, a small external speaker jack. That's a 3.5 millimeter jack. It's rated for 4 watts of output. Built-in speaker. I've got a standard RJ45 jack, which is pretty cool because in my vehicle I'm going to actually try to use some Ethernet cable in order to extend where the control unit sits compared to where this actual unit will sit behind my rear passenger seat. And then we've got a USB port on here for charging devices. This isn't for firmware updates, this is just USB power in order to charge devices. From a power cord perspective, it's got this type of lead. Haven't seen one of these on any amateur radios I've worked with before. It is keyed, so you can't put it in backwards. It's got square and round, which is nice. And it comes with a cigarette lighter adapter. I already cut mine off because everything that I do in my vehicles is all with Anderson power poles. So I've already terminated this with Anderson power poles. I'll probably take the cigarette lighter adapter out the other end and match power poles on it so somebody else could use it in their vehicle. But I've already changed that over to Anderson power poles. For the microphone hanger, it's got a pretty nice microphone hanger. This is a spring-loaded little nub in here that will retain and catch the clip on the back, making it a little bit harder to bounce out when you're on a four-wheel drive trail. It is an adhesive back on here. I don't see anywhere where you can do through-hole screw, but I will have to take it apart and take a look at what's behind this back plate here. The antenna that came with it, it's a pretty small antenna. Comes with just between 19 and 20 feet of antenna cable. It does have the PL259 connector on the end of it, so this might be a little bit difficult to run to the outside of your vehicle if you're trying to pass it through some sort of cavity. It's not a removable connector. It doesn't have a SMA on here, which would have been nice because then you would have only had to pass the SMA connector through like a firewall if you were going to run this to the outside of the vehicle. But not bad for a little antenna that's included. Okay, I've gone ahead and connected the radio RF up to a dummy load here sitting under this table. I've got the power leads connected into a 12-volt power supply, and as you can see, I've taken the microphone handheld unit here, plugged it into the RJ45 jack on the front panel of the radio, and put the dust cap in for the USB cover. So let's go ahead and power the radio on and take a look at some of the functions. So I've got the backlight display already set to orange. I think it shows up a little bit better on camera in orange than some of the other colors. But let's just talk about what we have on this hand mic. So going around on the top of it, we have our up and down buttons. These are our channel buttons. We have the power button. You can see I put my GMRS call sign printed out and taped to the front here. On the side, we've got our push to talk button. Very nice click on that push to talk, can definitely feel it. This unit's nice in my hand to hold. Good feel on it. On the other side, interestingly, we actually have a Midland speaker microphone jack on here. So you could actually plug in a headset or obviously an external speaker mic. And I can think of a couple of situations where that might come in handy. Obviously, if you're in a noisy environment, having an earpiece in would be very handy. But interesting that they've put that on the side. I kind of like that feature. Across the radio itself, it is a segment display, so it's kind of hard to understand what the different menu options are without a cheat sheet. I always put my manuals as PDFs on my tablet, so I always have them for quick reference. But we have a menu button here, call button, a lock. This is our volume up and down, monitor button, and the scan button. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and increment my channel, and you'll notice that while this is a GMRS radio, which we have 22 frequencies that we can use, you'll notice that as I go up, we go from channel 7 and we jump straight to channel 15. And that's because this radio came out in 2017-2018 before the FCC rule changes. So this has from a GMRS perspective, it can't transmit on channels 8 through 14. So you just will not be able to use those with those FRS handheld radios. Not a big deal. It does have the rest of the channels in here. The first, I think it's the first 7 channels are low power, and then we get into the high power channels, and I am now on the repeater channels. You'll notice on display here a little RP right next to the channel number, showing that this is a repeater channel. So if I have a mountaintop repeater that I want to get into, and you can see I've got this one programmed up with a DCS tone, and we'll get through how to program those. And back to channel 1. So it is circular. I can go up and down, which is pretty handy. All right, let's go ahead and get into the menu here and take a look at our options. So if I press menu, I'm on channel 1, which is one of our low power channels, and that matters here in just a second, as you'll see. So the first option I have here is for PT, or privacy tone. The next one is actually supposed to be powered, but because this is on channel 1 is only allowed to use low power, so I actually don't see that in the menu. And you'll see that the timeout on the menu is actually quite quick there. If I don't make a selection in a few seconds, it'll go ahead and go back to the main screen. So I hit menu again here. Now we see the selection of what looks like to be 5.9 or S9. That's actually supposed to be SQ for squelch. So there's our SQ for squelch. RB for that horrible Roger beep. Man, I can't not stand the Roger beeps on radios like these, so I always try to disable that if it's possible. You can see this Roger beep is set to off right now, and that is either on or off. As I move on to the call alert tone, another thing that I'm not a big fan of on these radios is call alert tones. You can see that this is set to call alert tone 01. There's 5 different tones on here. Again, I'm going to hit menu again, keep going forward. BP, so the BP, this is for beep, so silent option. So I mentioned earlier, this has got a pretty loud beep in it, so I've already disabled the beeping in this. Hit menu again, we'll go to the next one, repeater. So this turns on or off the repeater channels. So if you don't ever use any repeaters, want to make it a little bit faster to go up and down through the channels, you can disable repeaters. I have mine set to on because I actually do use the repeater function of this radio. And then lastly, we have our DB, or display background. This is kind of cool. We can change the colors of the background here. And let me just cycle through those. I hit menu, then I have to hit the lock button, and then we can cycle through the different colors. Now I think with at least my setup here with the camera, orange comes through the best, and we'll go ahead and get back to that. So let's go through and actually using the radio. First thing I need to do is I've got a Retevis RT76 here. I've got it programmed on a particular DCS code. I think I've got it for 116N and on channel 19. So let's power this guy on.
19.
All right, so this radio is on channel 19 now. Now I need to set the same thing up on this radio. So I'm going to go ahead and hit channel. Oops, that's my volume. I'm going to hit my channel up. Let's go over to channel 19. Set the high power. I'm now hit the menu button. I'm going to navigate through the menus here. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set my power to low. Don't need high power for that. And you can see it didn't take that input because I didn't press the lock key again to confirm. So now it's confirmed as low. Next thing I need to do is to set my DCS tone. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go from off, CTCSS, digital coded squelch. So yes, I want digital coded squelch. And now I have to pick my code. I've already looked up in the manual which code I need, which is code number 17. So let's go ahead and get to code number 17, which is that DCS code of 116. So we'll go ahead and confirm that tone. Make sure I've got some volume set here. Oops, that's my channel. Set my volume.
Check, check.
Excellent. So it is coming through just fine on that DCS tone of 116 on GMRS channel 19. So one of the other cool features of this radio that I like is that it does have a speaker in both the bass as well as in the handheld microphone, and you can choose to have it output on one, the other, or both. And you get to that by pressing the lock button here, and it's not super intuitive on what these stand for, but if I press the lock button here, we see the menu that comes up, and it says HOAO, which means it's outputting on both the handheld unit and the bass unit. I'm not quite sure why they choose to use that terminology. If I wanted to change these settings, I can go in here and press up and down in order to get through all of them. In my case, I like having both of them active. So I'm going to do HOAO, and both speakers are now active on this device. All right, so just two more features I want to cover here. One is going to be setting it up for a repeater. So I do have my repeater currently running into a dummy load in the home office here. So let me go ahead and let's set it up for my repeater channel 19 with the correct DCS code. You can see I'm on channel 19 right now, but on the display you'll notice that what's missing is the RP indicating a repeater channel. So let me go ahead and change my channel here. I need to get to channel 19 with RP, and it's set up for DCS with a DCS code of 70. And you'd have to reference the manual to know what that maps to. That's actually DCS code 627N, which is the wrong one for this. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. So in order to change it, I'm going to go to menu. I have my PT, and I can see that on PT it is set for DCS. I'm going to click the lock button again and the lock one more time, and now I'm going to change my DCS code down to number 17 because I've already looked up that DCS code 116N is equivalent to number 17 on this radio. Now, one really important thing to note about this radio, yes, it does support repeaters. It does not support split tones. That's really important because a lot of repeaters that I've seen, at least, certainly in the area where I live here in Arizona, you'll have a different input tone than output tone, meaning you'll transmit with one tone, but you'll receive with a different tone or just carrier squelch. And this radio does not support that functionality. So if you have repeaters in your area that require split tones, this unit will not work with those repeaters. All right, so I've got repeater channel 19 set. I'm on high power. I'm going to dummy load over here, so it doesn't really matter. I'm on DCS code number 17, which again, that maps to 116N. So let's go ahead and key up the transmitter and see if I can get a response from the repeater. Yep, there we hear the courtesy beep. These devices are sitting probably about 10 feet apart, both running into dummy loads. But we can see that I am outputting the power. We see the red transmit button coming through here, and on the handheld itself, we see the indication that it is transmitting. And we change to green on the way back. Again, see our signal strength coming through, and there's my repeater IDing itself with my FCC GMRS call sign. So to scan, I simply press this button. And now this device is scanning through all of the programmed channels on the radio. To stop the scan, I can just press the button again. Obviously the monitor button will blow a squelch. I don't have to hold it. Just a momentary press will blow that squelch. And then weather. And I probably won't hear any weather on here because I don't have an external antenna. I'm running into a dummy load, but it does scan the weather channels. All right, so I've got the radio on the bench. I have it. The radio is connected into the radio port of the Diamond SX 400 meter here. Then the antenna port of that is connected into our dummy load. So the first thing we need to do is to calibrate the meter for the frequency we're going to operate on. So I've got the Midland right now set to channel 1. Let's get that in focus. So on channel 1, which is a low power channel. And so the first thing we're going to need to do here is to set up our meter in order to take a look at that. So I'm going to go to calibrate. We're going to set it for the, let's go for the 5 watt range. This is a 5 watt frequency here. And let's go ahead and calibrate this. And so to calibrate it, I need to put in calibrate mode, transmit, and then turn the dial until it gets right on the line there. So we are now calibrated. And next thing I want to do is just check SWR. We'll look at our reflected on SWR. I'll go ahead and transmit again here. So not a perfect match. We're still under 1 to 2, but we may see some power being reflected back in. And then lastly, let's go ahead and go to forward power. I have power set to forward now, power, and 5 watts. Let's see what we get. So we're coming in there about 4 watts. And if I switch to reflected power, you can see that we're getting a little bit less than half a watt of power being reflected. So we'll call it about 4.5 watts we're seeing out of the radio into that dummy load there. All right, next thing we're going to do is try it on high power. So I need to switch to a high power frequency. So let's go here and go ahead and change this. Let's go to channel 19 for high power. All right, so I need to set the meter up for high power and for this different frequency. So radio is rated at 15 watts. So we're going to go to 20 on the meter. We're going to go to calibrate. I'm going to turn power mode to off. Now let's go ahead and transmit. And I'm pegging the meter. So let's go ahead and adjust that. So our SWR, again, not a perfect match. We're about just under 1 to probably 1.8. So we'll certainly see some power reflected back. So now let's go ahead and look at our power forward into the dummy load. So power forward into the dummy load, coming in about 13.5 watts there. And then power being reflected back because of that SWR mismatch. And hard to tell on this scale here without zooming in, but it looks like we're coming in close to that 14-15 watts in total power if we measure forward and reflected and add them together. So that's it. That's the MXT275 from Midland. Once I get it installed in the truck, I'll do a follow-up video just showing how I've installed it and how I use it every day. But overall, happy with the build quality of the radio. It's a fantastic size. I love this fact that it has a separate speaker mic with the controls built into it. On the downside, it doesn't do the FRS channels. It's only 15 watts out max power, which is probably going to be good enough for most applications. And then it does not do split tones. Split tones are important for many repeaters, not all, but many repeaters do use split tones. This doesn't have that, but if it's a standard repeater where you use the same tone for input and output, you'll be good to go. Thanks everyone.